Hello, this is Richard from Track Trail. I'm going to show you around our Track Trail interface that we're going to be using on next week's LDWA 100. So the URL for the actual event will be shared to you in this forum or via email to all the participants. And on the day, all of the trackers are going to appear on this link, and I'll show you a little bit about all of the features which you can expect to see. So first of all, what can we see here? We have got the main map. We've got a sidebar, we've got a couple of other buttons up here and down here. So let's first of all start with the interface itself, the map itself, I should say. What you can hopefully see is up here are the checkpoint locations, and as you hover over them, it will tell you which checkpoint they relate to, and this one being the start as well as the finish area as well. So the little grey route shows, the little grey line shows the route. I think we're actually going to make this a brighter colour for the main event, so it'll be red or something along those lines. And what you'll then see is somewhere between 500 and 600 little flags gradually moving all around the map. And at the moment, I'm quite far zoomed out, and it clusters them together. But the closer and closer you get zoomed into the map, you'll see it splits them all out until you start to see the individual trackers that you can see here. So if you want to see any information about a specific tracker, let's say we wanted to look at the leader, you can click on the tracker and it gives some interesting information. It would have the participant's name here across the top. These are just numbered 369 because this is just a simulation which we're running at the moment. It tells you what time the tracker last set some data, which is 12:06. It gives a grid reference. It would give you, in the case of the actual event, there would be some elevation data in there, as well as the battery percentage that's left on the trackers. It will then tell you what time the last checkpoint was reached. In this case, it reached checkpoint 3 at 12:01, and then it gives ETAs for all of the remaining checkpoints, so you can calculate what time they'll arrive. I should say that we have got this simulator running at a accelerated speed, so this isn't a realistic walking pace, but just for the purposes of a simulation to show you how this all works. And that's why these trackers are moving much faster than you would walk or probably even normally cycle. So what you can see there is all those ETAs. So it's very useful for knowing what time the person you're viewing is going to be at a particular checkpoint, so you can perhaps meet them somewhere or somewhere nearby. Okay, what's next up? The map types. There are various map types you can choose from. In the case of the LDWA event next week, there'll be a couple of extra ones. There should be some ordnance survey maps, but basically you can click on any of these and it will change the map style. You can go on to Google Maps, which in all honesty is not particularly useful, but you'll be using most likely one of the OpenStreetMaps or the Ordnance Survey maps. You can use this button to zoom in and out, or you can just use your fingers as you would on your phone to zoom in, or roll forward and backward with a mouse wheel. And as it gets closer, you see more and more of the detail. And if you're on the Ordnance Survey maps, you would see all of the styles all of the stone walls and things like that by the time you get into the deepest layer. Right, there's a key up on the top. So what do these colours mean? That the flags, if you see a flag which is green, it means that the tracker is moving. If a flag is orange, it means it's been stationary for about 3 minutes. If it's grey, it means for some reason the tracker hasn't sent a report for about an hour. That could mean that the person's been resting for an hour, or it could also mean that for some reason the tracker has got a poor location in the bag and it needs to be moved to a better place, or perhaps even restarted. Finally, the flags will go very dark grey, close to black if they are turned off or they've been retired, and they will go red if the SOS button has been pressed on the front of the tracker. Next up is the participant bar. In here right now, there's a very long list of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trackers. In the case of the actual event, you will actually see their bib number, or the tally card number, should I say, and the actual names in here. It will give the speed which they are currently traveling at. At the moment, this is shown in kilometers or miles, in miles per hour, should I say. You can change this to be kilometers per hour by clicking on this at the top, so you can alter between those two. And what you also got is this icon here, which is the favorites. So we're not really interested in looking at 500 people, but you might know these 3 or 4 people here, and you may want to follow them. And if you highlight those with the star and click on the favorites button, everybody else will disappear and you suddenly see it's a lot more manageable because you're only looking at those 4 particular people. Furthermore, we can drill down on that. So if I click on the individual participant's name or on this little icon, it will bring up a more detailed view about this particular person. Again, it will have their name, their update time, their speed, the distance, average speed, and also what time they'd reached each of the checkpoints, the speed that they'd reached it at, and also the estimated times of arrival for all those other checkpoints as well. These are the buttons at the bottom. These are quite useful. This one here toggles on and off their recorded route. So if I click on this, a black line will appear which shows you their actual recorded path in relation to the planned route. So if I click on the black line, you can see this person is almost very closely followed the route. You'll see a few kind of straight lines drawn. This is just an artifact of the trackers only updating every minute or so, whereas this would take a longer period of time. If you had a trackers updating once per second, it would very faithfully follow that, but the tracker battery wouldn't last that long. So we send them to update typically once a minute, and that way the tracker battery lasts for a few days, long enough to last for the full duration of the event. If I go back on and then I click that, the black line will disappear. But if I click it on again, let me just show you, if you can see this little slider in the corner with the time above it, a little white line circle appears. And as I drag it along, it tells you what time each participant or that participant was at that point. So there we can see they got to the first checkpoint around 11:30 and the second checkpoint around 11:45, etc., etc. So it's quite useful to see where they all were. The next button we can look at are, I'll show you these two first of all. These download the route. So after the event, you may wish to download your recorded route as a GPX file or a KML file. Some people like to import them into Strava. One thing I would say about that is certainly download those files if you're interested in them. They will not exactly match the mileage, and for the reason I explained earlier, that trackers do not send one update every second. As a result, because they're only sending one update every minute or so, they will draw straight lines across certain parts of the route, that being a prime example. And when you factor this over 100 miles, you will tend to find that it will underread the mileage by 5 or 10%. It just depends how quickly or slowly the person is moving. So it's a good indicator of where you've been. It will not add up to 100 miles. It will say something less than that. So only use it as an advisory only. But that's not important. It doesn't affect the actual tracking itself, and you'll still see, oh, I've popped onto the wrong place there, I don't want to go to the leaderboard just yet. You'll still see that everyone has passed through the route very easily by looking in the leaderboard, which I'm about to show you next. Just before we do that, the other button which is interesting is if you're a support crew and you wanted to go and meet your person somewhere on the route, or they were injured, they needed a pickup. If you click on this from, for example, your mobile phone, it will launch Google Maps and offer you the ability to navigate from wherever you are to that flag there. Now, if I click that in this case, I am far away in Telford, a little further away in Telford, so let me just show you what happens. It will launch Google Maps and plot me a route from where I am in Telford right the way through to that person. Now, obviously not applicable in your case. You would be probably somewhere much closer on the course, and so you could leave it on the driving option and it would get there to them. You can also choose the walking or the cycling option. It will optimize the routes for that as well. Okay, now we've done that, let's move on to the final area, which is the leaderboard. If I click on the leaderboard, once that loads, that will bring up a list of all the participants and all of the checkpoints, and it will put them in rank order based on the speed and distance that they've achieved, based on the speed, if I remember rightly. Also rank them on who reaches the furthest checkpoint first. So what details have we got? We've got a battery life indicator. That's if those are green, that means they're good. There's a little key at the bottom which tells you, if I go right to the bottom, the battery percentage. Wouldn't worry about the batteries, they're going to last plenty long enough for this event. Next up, you've got a movement indicator. Green, as with the map, green being moving, orange means stationary, red SOS, black turned off, etc. You've got the tally number here. That's the rank. This is the tally number. This is the participant name. You can use these buttons to reorder those, so you can change it into the first number first or the last number first. You can change them into participant order, alphabetical order. There's the distance that they've traveled so far. Again, you can rank that in distance order. Or the least distance order by clicking it again. It shows the last time the tracker sent an update. Then you've got the speed, which will be either in kilometers or miles per hour. And finally, the times that they reach each checkpoint. For those that they haven't reached, the grayed out ones show their ETAs. So the ETAs are based on their current speed, factoring in resting times at checkpoints as well, using the algorithm that we've got. Now, the ETAs will usually be very, very accurate for upcoming checkpoints. Of course, they're not going to be accurate for the later checkpoints in the finish line, because people are going to subsequently take breaks and rests and things like that. So they're very useful for the first few CPs and less so for these. Obviously, the closer and closer you get through the event, the average time will smooth out, and these will end up being very, very accurate. In much the same way as on the Google option, you can use these buttons to navigate to each checkpoint. So if you don't know where the checkpoint is on your phone and you're supporting, you could click on that. It will launch Google Maps on your phone and navigate you by car or by foot or cycle, whichever you choose, to get you to that checkpoint. The splits are shown here. So these are all the cumulative distances adding up with each distance at the top. And then the distance between each checkpoint is shown here. So you can see this is a 10K, 11K split. It's a 13K split between those two checkpoints. If you're using a desktop PC, you'll be able to see things like moving averages. So it shows the speed that someone's achieved between checkpoint 2 and checkpoint 3 and checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2. And as you can see there, as I stated, these are massively sped up because this person seems to be achieving 30.3 kilometers per hour, which is a cheetah-like speed. But on the event, you're going to be looking at more realistic miles or kilometers per hour speeds there. Which will be obviously far more accurate. You can change the display from clock times to elapsed time. So that's what time they got in there at 11:43. If you change it to elapsed time, this page will reload and say it took 19 minutes to get to here, 34 minutes, 52, and ultimately you'd end up with the overall time of finish time being 24 hours, 46 hours, whatever it might be. Okay, I think that is more or less everything to show you. I'll just pop back on the map by clicking that icon there. Obviously, if you've got any questions, by all means, and I'll try and answer them if you place any questions in the comments below. But other than that, I wish everybody all the best for next week's event. Thank you.